I mean, I gotta just tell you, like, a huge part of the reason why I'm so excited to do this with you is because I'm such a huge fan. You, in fact, got me into MMA, where before I just didn't give a fuck about it at all. I mean,
Aw.
I used to work in a video store reshelving the rented VHS tapes. And there was a whole little section for this was 1996 and the UFC started in 93. There was a whole section of Ultimate Fighting. And I tried to watch it at one point and I was just like, man, all this like laying on the ground because they didn't have rounds, you know? So
Right.
like, so the grappling exchanges would be like really long and I found it boring, you know? Like, of course now I'm like such a crazy fan. Like I love all the grappling. But yeah, I'm one of millions of people who have become like a diehard UFC fan, like purely because of you. And
Aw.
and
Thank
I
you. I appreciate that. I actually have like a very different grappling background from most people because I came from judo and the guys that you were watching came from jujitsu where they had
right.
unlimited time on the ground. And unless you had a background in jujitsu, you wouldn't really know what you were looking at. And so it's like, what are these guys doing? It's boring. It looks gay. It looks da, 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 da. Like all these people had these preconceived notions about it. But I came from Olympic judo, which has very biased officiating, and so they a lot of the times would give me like 1 second even to work from on the ground or two. I like had to constantly be making progress, or they would make me stand up. And so I kind of always felt like I was fighting against my opponent and the referee. So I kind of had to make every match into a fight in order to win. And I had to be able to transition into an armbar and to finish right away on the ground because that was the most definite way to win. If you were choking somebody out and they make you stand up, well, that person just takes a deep breath and they're fine. If you're pinning somebody and they make you stand up, well, they're absolutely fine. But if you break somebody's arm and they make you stand up, bitch has a broken arm. And if you still lose after that, then you're the asshole. Like, that's the kind of thing that my mom would teach me as a kid. So she would be like, every single match, everything that you're doing, every single time that you hit the ground, you are going straight into breaking the arm as fast as you can. And that was kind of like how I was drilled to think from a very, very young age, like as young as like 12. My mom was like, okay, it's time for you to start doing arm bars. And that was always the goal in every exchange. Was it starts with I get my hands on you, we're going to get to the ground at some point, and as soon as we hit the ground I should be trying to break your arm immediately. I had a chick show up and she's like, I can't make weight because I'm on my period. And I'm like, fuck you, that's a fucking pussy ass bitch answer. You know that you had a vagina when you signed up for this. Like, you can't act like you weren't ineligible to fight a fourth of your life. Fuck off.
You
Make
know,
weight. Don't be a pussy. Dude, there's really no excuse to cut weight. You're a professional. You know when the match is going to be. Like, you are paid to show up and make weight on that day. And if you are unable to do that, then don't promise that you're going to do it. But I have like a different perspective about it. The only time I missed weight in judo, I moved up to the next division, the very next tournament, and I never went back down again because I'm like, well, guess I can't make this fucking weight anymore, and that's it. It's you got to show up and you got to do your job. We're professionals. If you're not a professional, then like, what the fuck are you doing there?
right. Now, what I've heard people say that weight cutting is like generally like a really like sort of dangerous, like harmful thing that what are your thoughts about that? Like is there
Well, it's as harmful as you decide to make it be. Like, you are at the freedom to choose whatever division you want to be in. And if you feel like it's harmful for you to go below a certain weight, then don't attempt to go below that weight. Fight up. Like,
right.
you're not a fucking slave, dude. Like, it's a free country. Pick the weight that's healthiest for you and become the biggest badass at that. Like, I don't see the difficulty there. I mean, I've definitely had really, really hard times cutting weight. I've definitely had like good days and bad days, days when I was fighting too much and didn't have enough time to recover. And, my performance definitely suffered from it different times, but I never blamed anybody else for that. You know, it was my decision to take that fight at that time, my decision to do it at that weight. Everything was my decision. And so everything was my responsibility. And I never like pushed off my responsibility in those situations to I'm a victim of my situation because I'm in a situation of my own creation.
Is that when you look at like MMA, UFC, like any one of these MMA organizations, that like really the norm is that people don't make all that much money. Like they end up like with like fucking brain trauma, you know, like fucked up brains, like fucked up bodies. And then at the end of their careers, which don't tend to run very long, they're in like physically horrible fucking shape and they have absolutely nothing to show for it because they didn't make really much money to get by on anyway. And I was so interested by the way that you responded to that. Like very you know, you said, well, I mean, you can say it again. The alternative coming out of the Olympics is you make nothing. You know, that here you said that the UFC and all these MMA organizations give you an opportunity as an athlete to make a living, which otherwise you wouldn't. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I walked out of the Olympics with, you know, a bronze medal, and I knew that I am the baddest bitch on the planet. You know, and if anybody tries to start shit with me, I could fucking take them down and break their arm in a second. And nobody gave a fuck. It was a completely useless skill. The only job it helped me get is as a cocktail waitress in Crenshaw because they thought I could, you know, defend myself. Like, what am I going to do with that? I spent the amount of time and energy on trying to develop those skills as anyone spends on a degree or a PhD, but there was no career out there for me. So I had to create a career for myself for the skill set that I had because in any kind of workplace, it was completely useless. And so all these other people that are former Olympic athletes would have otherwise had nothing. They would have ended up, you know, having to start all over with no education or work experience. Because if you devote your life to a sport of the Olympics, after it's over, you're behind. And you didn't make shit off the fucking Olympics. Yes, guess what? You make less money on than the UFC. Fucking the Olympics. That shit costs you money, okay?
Right.
And then in a bunch of any other countries, they like give you a house and a car and some gratitude or whatever. And you know, I bitched about it so much they got rid of taxing people for the prize money for Olympic medals. But I got a bronze medal in judo, spent my whole life doing it. They gave me 10 grand, taxed me on it. That was 6 grand. And I couldn't even get a used Honda Accord for that. Like,
fuck.
That's what I had to show for that shit. And people are bitching about being able to like make a living from their skills doing the UFC. Like, no one told you it was a fucking pillow fight. You know what it is. It wasn't like you were lured into something. You're like, oh God, you're getting punched in the face. Like, no, we are quite aware of how dangerous it is. And it's just like, you know, like there's much more dangerous things. It's a lot of the injuries in MMA are cosmetic. You know, you usually get cut or something before you really start getting crazy brain damage, like as opposed to like boxing where you win by neurological injury. This person gets knocked out and counted fucking 10 over and over and over. You know how many people die in boxing every year? You know how many people die in, you know, football because they have a helmet protect them and they have this, you know, brain suspended in fluid and all the force and everything. Like, of all the different options out there, I was like, man, MMA looks so great. I'm going to try and find a way to get myself in there. You know, like it was the best option I could find at the time.
I mean,
so like, I don't feel that bad for people who are like, oh shit, man, it was really rough on my body and it didn't really work out. We're like, well, no one guaranteed that shit was going to work out. And of course, it's fucking rough on your body. Were you watching it? Did you see what was going on? Like, it's not like there was any false pretenses. Like, you knew what you're getting into. Yeah, there isn't much history in seeing, like, the long-term effects of what happens to people. But you're also very fucking aware of that. Like, you know that you're jumping into the pool and you're the first fucking swimmers and who knows what's going to happen in the long run. But no one sold it as anything different.
Right.
You know? So these are all like our conscious choices and all of our consequences that we chose to live with. It wasn't
Right.
presented as anything else.
It's such an interesting point that you make, that people die in boxing all the time and nobody has died from MMA. Is that right? Or
Dude,
is it just
7 people die like a year from boxing or something like that. I could have made that statistic up, but it seems good. Seems about right. But I think like a couple people, maybe like 1 or 2 have died doing MMA.
but not in the UFC?
Dude, people have died doing judo. You know,
Right.
like people have ended up paralyzed from the neck down, diving and doing a Nuchibata. And, you know, people died doing gymnastics from doing
Right.
that fucking round off thing into the horse, and they tucked their
Right.
head and then they can't move with the neck down. Like, it's
Right.
a dangerous fucking world out there. I don't know what you want me to tell you.
Right. I'm with you.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a certain kind of person that should go into that lifestyle. And if that risk is something that you're not willing to deal with, then dude, you're not going to go that far because it's not that important to you. You have
Right.
to be willing to die to be the best in order to be the best. And it has to like be something that is that much a part of you in order for you to get far enough for you to make a living anyway. And if
I
you're
love it.
in that fuzzy in between zone, dude, go to school. Like, please.